my success comes from spirituality, not finance. And what happened was when my wife and I started Rich Dad back in 1996, actually, we left the spirituality out. And then the corporate types came in, you know, the MBAs and the accountants and attorneys, and they tried to make it into a business. And I said, no, we're just a bunch of merry men who are kind of like Robin Hood and his gang.
Are you Robin Hood? Taking from the rich and giving to the poor?
No, I don't believe it. I don't believe in giving to the poor.
But you're giving knowledge to the poor.
Yes, that's a very big difference. You see, people say, well, why don't you give the poor money? So the only problem with that is it just creates more poor people.
Give a man a fish, he fishes for the day, or eats for the day.
Yeah, you give a man a fish, you get a lot of people who want more fish, you know? Well, you teach them to fish.
But you are the Robin Hood of knowledge, because I see you giving this knowledge out, and do the rich people cringe and say, don't tell them that, Rob?
Yes. Don't tell people what you know. Right. Keep them poor. But, you know, unfortunately, the poor, as was in the Bible, I'm not real religious, the poor will always be amongst us, because it starts up here.
Right, it's that fear mentality.
It's in their words, you know, and the words become flesh. Again, I'm not really religious. I flunked out of Sunday school also. But when they say I can't afford it or I can't do that, they go down. They become what they say. You know, the question I ask all over the world, what does school teach you about money? And the answer is nothing. And that's not a mistake. That's not an accident. I knew that, most people know that. But the way to keep the poor and middle class working hard is never teach them what the rich know. So if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which came out in 1997, it's what the rich teach their kids about money, the poor and middle class do not. And so, and I had already retired. I made enough money at 47, so I didn't have to work again for the rest of my life. And I said, now what do I do with the rest of my life? And so that's when I came out with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the cash flow game, because poverty hurts. I mean, I don't like it. And I don't like that our academic system's so corrupt. You know, we know the banking system's corrupt. We know politics is corrupt, but academics is just as corrupt. So I just said, well, if exactly as Fuller said, what does God want done, not what I want done. Martin Luther King said it another way. King says, I just want to do God's will. So that's what I cover in Faith. What does God want done? He says that the moment you accept a paycheck, your brain goes dead. You know, you just got paid. He says, as long as you're hungry, you'll think. And he was a great, great teacher. So today when people ask me what I do, they know me as the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I just say I play Monopoly. So I own greenhouses, I own big hotels, I own oil wells, golf courses, businesses. I'm just playing Monopoly. That's all I do. So what happens to the average person in a financial crash, they don't know what to do. And right now, as you know, for the middle class of the world, we're in a crash. You know, the purchasing power of the yen, the euro, the rupiah, all going down. And people are working harder and harder and harder, and the central banks of the world are printing more money. Interest rates, you know, Trump just told the Fed, don't you raise those interest rates. Well, that screws all the savers.
Right, and everyone hears the economy's doing great and the stock market's up, but the middle class and the poor are having a harder time.
Correct.
Right.
And that's why I write and I speak. They know nothing about money, and they teach our kids.
Right.
They're good people, like 80% are good people. 20% just are there for the pension and the paycheck, we know that. But the higher the risk, the more you have to study. You know that, I know that. So if you're not going to study, you're not going to practice and all that, then you should do what Wall Street tells you to do. Buy, you know, 401ks, mutual funds, ETFs and all that. But that's where they're fake assets, because they only make Wall Street or the City of London rich. Just watch where the cash is flowing. Follow the money.
Yeah.
It's not making the poor middle class rich. You know, all Wall Street in America has done is rip off the pensions, because, you know, pensions are the biggest pool of money in America. And states like Kentucky, New Jersey, Illinois, California, Hawaii are going bankrupt because Wall Street went in and just sucked all the cash out of their pensions. So the school teachers like my dad, the firefighters and police officers, they have no retirement now. See, there's three kinds of income. earned, portfolio, passive. So earned income is if I get a job, that's earned income. If I'm a doctor or a programmer, that's earned income because I'm working for it. If I buy, let's say, Apple for $10 and I sell it for $20, that's portfolio income, capital gains.
Yeah.
But passive income, which is cash flow, is never taxed. So it's not, and so these guys are screaming right now in America, tax the rich. I said, good luck. Because most of the guys complaining, they don't know there's three kinds of income. And the rich don't have jobs anyway. They have assets.
Sometimes, like you said, they don't have the education, but you need to have a plan if you're going to go do risky things.
Well, it's not risky. I mean, to me, what's risky is having a job and paying taxes and saving money because they're printing it. You know, that's the worst thing of all. And that's why there's fake money, fake teachers, because the teachers will never, they don't know it.
Right.
And fake assets, because Wall Street or the City of London or Lehman Brothers or Goldman and all, they're not going to tell you this.
Yeah.
How are there billionaire bankers today? So once you learn how to use debt as money, you can never say, I can't afford it. You see, because the banks will give you, so the banks, after the crash of 2008, the banks gave me $300 million tax-free to buy real estate that the idiots had lost. I hate this, and they were idiots because the prices were so high. Why would you buy it at the top of a market? Don't you know that's going to crash? They, oh, no, this is, that was the subprime, was the derivatives market, the MBSs and all that stuff. Had driven the price of real estate so high, and the rest of us were just waiting. And then when the whole thing came crashing down, all this real estate was now available, and they needed, the Fed and those guys in the Treasury needed guys like us to go in there. So Wall Street gave us hundreds of millions of dollars to mop up all that real estate these guys had lost. Now, it's fair because everybody could do it. Rich, poor, middle class, poverty starts with a fundamental attitude. So I was in Hawaii, I was 9 years old. My father was the head of education, PhD. Very smart man, good guy. And for some reason, we moved across town and I went to a school with rich kids. So this is a little town called Hilo, Hawaii. That's not on the map anywhere, but it is. It's a sugar plantation town. So when I was 9 years old, I moved to this rich kids school. And suddenly I realized I was poor because it's relative, as Einstein, it's all relative. And my classmates were mostly white guys. And I was one of the few Asians in the class. And these guys, their fathers owned the banks, they owned the plantations, they owned the car dealerships, they owned the meat packing company, they owned the ranches. And I'm going, how come my dad doesn't own that? So I remember raising my hand when I was 9 years old, talking to my fourth grade teacher, and I said, when am I going to learn about money? And she was this woman who should have retired 50 years earlier. She was so sick and tired of kids by this time. She says, the love of money is the root of all evil. And I said, what am I, in Sunday school? And I was this punky little 9-year-old kid. And she says, we don't teach money at school. I said, why not? And she couldn't answer me. And she got very flustered. She said, sit down, take your seat. And then I got curious. I said, why don't we learn about money? She says, go ask your father. He's my boss. So my father was the head of education. PhD, all that stuff. I go home and ask him, I said, why don't we learn about money in school? And he looked at me and says, because the government doesn't let us teach that subject. The government tells us what we can teach and what we can't teach. And we still tell kids to go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, and get out of debt. Now, who tells them to do that? That's the most ridiculous thing there is.
The book starts and it says, lie number 1, saving money will make you rich.
Yeah, it never will. You know that.
We're all taught that as kids.
Yeah, because they can print it. Why would you save it and why would you work for it if they can print it faster than you can work for it? And number 2 is they keep dropping the interest rates on it. Japan still has zero interest rate policy. And the Japanese are the biggest savers in the world. And I'm Japanese, I'm 4th generation. They're not too bright.
Right.
Why do you keep saving when they're printing it? You know, when I'm in Japan, that's what I mean by fear. They're so afraid because the Japanese, they're very a good culture, but they do as they're told.
Right. It's very conformist.
Very conformist, they're very conformist. So they just do as they're told, and then they just save money, and their government, this guy Abenomics, is just printing trillions of it and buying ETFs with it, and they don't know what to do.
And they've been doing this for 20 years.
Because they're afraid.
They're afraid, okay.
They're afraid they might make a mistake. They're good little students in school. Go to school, get a job, don't make mistakes.
Right, and that's what school conditions people to do,
Correct.
is to not get mistakes.
Correct.
Get an A on the test, show up and do your homework. But to be a great entrepreneur and investor and a great rich person, you have to engineer mistakes into your life.